Good afternoon, attorney. Good afternoon, classmates. Today I'm going to discuss about the Labor Code of the Philippines, which tackles the labor, employment, and HR consulting in the Philippines. So I'm going to summarize this for the presentation of these slides. The Labor Code, Presidential Decree Number 442. This decree shall be known as the Labor Code of the Philippines. The Labor Code of the Philippines stands as the law governing the employment practices and labor relations in the Philippines. It was enacted on Labor Day of 1974 by the President Ferdinand Marcos in the exercise of his then extant legislative powers. It describes the rules for hiring and termination of employees, the conditions of work, including the maximum work hours and overtime, employee benefits such as the holiday pay, 13th-month pay, and retirement pay, and the guidelines in the organization and membership in the labor unions, as well as the collective bargaining. For the labor code, we're going to discuss the labor standards and the labor relations. So for the labor standards, first, the types of employment. There are five types of employment in the Philippines, mostly described with the nature of activities that employees perform. Number one, the regular or permanent employment. Number two, casual employment. Number three, fixed term employment. Number four, project employment. And number five, seasonal employment. Number one, the regular employment. Regular or the permanent employment is when an employee performs activities that are necessary or desirable to the business of the employer. Regular employees enjoy the benefit of tenure and cannot be terminated for causes other than those provided by law and only after due process. Most companies in the Philippines require their new employees to undergo probationary employment for a maximum of 6 months to evaluate their skills and performance and to determine if they are able to meet the reasonable standards to become permanent employees. Number two, the casual employment. Casual employment is when an employee performs work that is usually not necessary or primarily related to the employer's business. The period of employment must be made clear to the employee at the time they started rendering service. However, employees that have rendered service for at least 1 year in the same company, whether continuous or not, shall be considered regular employees with respect to the activities they perform and will continue rendering service while such activities exist in the company. So one good example for this is a mechanic who is hired from time to time to fix machinery in a manufacturing company is a casual employee, or it could be a painter or the IT expert that checks the computer system of the company. Number three, the fixed term employment. Term or the fixed term employment is a type of employment that is not determined by the activities that employees are required to perform, but by the commencement and the termination of the employment contract. A fixed-term employee can only render services within a set period of time stipulated in the employment contract, and the employer must terminate his or her employment after such period expires. So one of the good examples for this are those actor or actresses in the showbiz industry or this entertainment business. Number four, project employment. Project employment is when an employee is hired for a specific project and the duration of employment is defined by the scope of work or the length of the project. A project employee can acquire the status of a permanent employee if They are continuously rehired to undertake other projects of the company, or the tasks they perform are necessary and indispensable to the usual operations of the company. One good example of a project employee is a person who works for the construction firm as a laborer. Number 5, seasonal employment. Seasonal employment is defined when an employment contract is only for a certain time or season of the year. This common practice in service industries such as the retail, food and beverage, and the hospitality to increase the manpower and cover labor demand during peak seasons. Another example for it, those in the municipality hires lifeguards each summer, for example, within 4 months from March through June. So summer work at the beach or to the public pools. So they hire lifeguards. Second is the minimum wages. Minimum wage rates in the Philippines vary per region and are prescribed by the Regional Tripartite Wages and Productivity Board, or the RTWPB. Under the most recent wage order for the National Capital Region, for example in Metro Manila, the dollar wage order number 22 set the minimum wage rate at 500 for agricultural and 537 pesos for the non-agricultural. This is the table for the Philippines nominal minimum wage rates as of 2021. For the left side, the minimum wage rate for the non-agriculture. Then on the right side, the minimum wage rate for the agriculture. Third, the mandatory employee benefits. Under the Labor Code, employees in the private sector are granted six basic mandatory benefits, which are follows: Social Security System for the private sector, and GSIS for the public sector. Then, Philippine National Health Corporation, or the PhilHealth. Third, the Home Development Mutual Fund, or the Pag-ibig Fund. Fourth, the 13th month pay. Fifth, sixth, the fifth and sixth are the service incentive leaves and the meal and rest periods. Social Security System, or the SSS. The SSS is the government financial institution in the Philippines. Its mission to manage a sound and viable social security system which shall promote social justice and provide meaningful protection to members and their families against the hazards of the disability, sickness, maternity, old age, death, and other contingencies resulting in the loss of income or financial burden. The vision, a viable social security institution providing a universal and equitable social protection through a world-class service. The SSS, or the Social Security System, administers social security protection to workers in the private sector. Social Security provides replacement income for workers in times of death, disability, sickness, maternity, and old age. It provides retirement and health benefits to all paid up employees in the Philippines. Next is the Government Service Insurance System, or the GSIS. The Government Service Insurance System provides social security coverage to employees in the public sector. It officially started its operations on May 31, 1937, with the life insurance program as its only business. The vision, GSIS will have a longer actuarial life with sustained member benefits and responsive service to its stakeholders. The mission, provide social security, insurance, and financial benefits to all the government employees and their dependents. While GSIS, or sorry, while SSS is a social insurance program that aims to provide protection to its members and beneficiaries. The GSIS serves as a counterpart social insurance program for those who work in the government or in the public sector. PhilHealth. The National Health Insurance Program was established to provide a health insurance coverage and ensure affordable, acceptable, available, and accessible healthcare services for all citizens of the Philippines. Their vision, bawat Pilipino, bawat miyembro protektado, kalusugan ng lahat sigurado. Their mission, benepisyong pangkalusugan sapat at dekalidad para sa lahat. PhilHealth implements the National Health Insurance Program that aims to provide Filipinos with financial assistance and access to affordable health services. It covers hospital costs, subsidy for room and boarding, medicine, and professional services. Next, the HDMF or the Pag-ibig Fund. The Pag-ibig Fund was founded by virtue of Presidential Decree number 1530, which was signed by President Ferdinand Marcos on June 11, 1978, to answer the national need for savings program and affordable housing financing. Its original purpose was solely as a provident fund to encourage savings among Filipinos. The Home Development Mutual Fund, or the HDMF, popularly known as the Pag-ibig Fund, operates a national savings program and provides affordable shelter for financing for Filipino workers. Members of Pag-ibig are entitled to a provident savings program as well as access to various short-term loans and housing loans. The 13th month pay. To give a clear definition of what the 13th month pay is, it is a mandatory compensation that is provided to the rank and file employees by the end of the calendar year. It was passed into law on December 16, 1975, after President Ferdinand Marcos signed the Presidential Decree number 851. Under the law, the 13th month pay shall not be less than 1/12 of the total basic salary earned by an employee within the calendar year. Mandatory salary bonus equivalent to an employee's 1 month salary, which must be given not later than December 24 every year. Last, the leave and rest period. Service incentive leave, where the employees who have rendered at least 1 year of service is entitled to a yearly service incentive of 5 days with pay. Then, the meal and rest periods. A meal period of not less than 1 hour and a rest period of short duration in the morning and afternoon that should be included in the hours worked. Fourth, the working hours. Normal work hours. An employee's normal work hours at work must not exceed 8 hours a day. Then, the night shift differential pay. An employee performing work between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. must be paid a night shift premium. Then, the overtime work. This work performed beyond the normal working hours must be paid an additional compensation. Under the normal work hours, an employee's normal work hours at work does not exceed 8 hours a day. Working hours shall include the whole duration when an employee is required to be on duty or to be at the prescribed workplace, and also the full duration when an employee is permitted to work, and the rest periods of short duration during working hours. The night shift and overtime. An employee performing work between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. must be paid a night shift premium of not less than 10% of the regular wage for each hour of work performed. The work performed beyond the normal working hours must be paid an additional compensation equivalent to an employee's regular wage plus at least 25% thereof. Employees who work beyond 8 hours on a holiday or rest day shall also be paid an additional compensation equivalent to the rate of the first 8 hours plus at least 30% thereof. And then last, for the labor standards, the fifth part, the other mandatory rights and benefits. Number one, right to weekly rest days. Employees have a right to a weekly rest period of not less than 24 consecutive hours after every 6 consecutive normal working days. Number two, right to holiday pay. An employee shall be paid his regular daily wage during regular holidays, except in retail and service establishments, regularly employing less than 10 workers. The employee may be required to work on a holiday, but shall be paid a compensation equivalent to twice the regular rate. Then number three, right to separation pay. Employees dismissed from work due to business closure, reduction of the cost, or the retrenchment, and other reasons that are beyond their control should be granted separation pay equivalent to at least 1 month's salary for every year of service on their company. For the labor relations, first is the type of employment termination. There are two types of termination in the Philippines: termination by the employer and the termination by the employee or the voluntary resignation. Termination of employment in the Philippines can be a complex process for employers since the labor code is construed in favor of the employees. Number one, the termination by the employer. An employer can terminate an employee based on just cause or authorized cause. A just cause is based on the acts attributable to an employee's own wrongful actions or negligence, while an unauthorized cause refers to lawful grounds for termination which do not arise from a fault or negligence of the employee. An employee can be terminated for the following just causes: could be a serious misconduct or the willful disobedience of the lawful orders of the employer, could be fraud or the execution of a crime or offense against the employer, and other related causes. Similarly, an employee can also be terminated for authorized causes, such as the retrenchment or or the reduction of the cost to prevent the business losses, the closure of the business or the operations, or it could be because of the disease or the illnesses which can no longer be cured and the employee needs medical attention. Number two, the termination by the employee or the voluntary resignation. An employee may file a voluntary resignation without a just cause or with just cause. The just causes for filing resignation are as follows. One, there is an insult to the honor and person of the employee. Number two, there is an inhumane or unbearable treatment by the employer or the company. Three, there are crime committed against the employee or to his or her family. And then other related causes. Now, if the resignation is without just cause, then the employee must give a 1 month advance written notice of resignation, or which uh, referred or known as the resignation letter to them to the employer to enable them to look for a replacement and prevent work delay. Second is the illegal dismissal. Employees can file a complaint for illegal dismissal before the National Labor Relations Commission if the cause of their termination does not fall under the conditions stipulated by the Labor Code of the Philippines. In cases of the illegal dismissal, the employer has the duty of providing the dismissal is valid. Employees are allowed to question their dismissal from work based on two grounds. It could be substantive or procedural. Substantive is the absence of a just cause and authorized cause supporting the dismissal. Then the procedural, it is the failure of the employer to give the employee the opportunity to explain their side. Under the dismissal, employees who are unjustly dismissed are entitled to any or all of the following: 1. Reinstatement without loss of seniority rights. 2. The separation pay equivalent to at least 1 month's salary for every year of service if reinstatement cannot be provided. Third, the full back wages, inclusive of allowances and other benefits of their monetary equivalent from the time compensation was withheld up to the time of the reinstatement. And then fourth, the payment of the damages, the attorney fees, if the dismissal was done in bad faith. Last is the unions. Unions in the Philippines are classified into two: the public sector union and the private sector union. Public sector union or the public employees organization, which refers to any organization, union, or association of employees in the agencies of government which exists in whole or in part of the purpose of collective negotiations for the mutual aid, interest, cooperation, and protection. Then, the private sector union or the labor organization refers to any union or association of employees in the private sector which exists in whole or in part of the purpose of collective bargaining or a mutual aid, interest, cooperation, protection, and other lawful purposes. What is a union and what is its purpose? A labor union is an organization that acts as an intermediary between its members and the business that employs them. The main purpose of labor unions is to give workers the power to negotiate for more favorable working conditions and other benefits through collective bargaining. Now, what is collective bargaining? It is the heart and the soul of a labor union. Collective bargaining occurs when a group of people, such as the workforce of the company, bands together to increase its negotiating power. Labor unions join workers together, allowing the voices of individual workers to be heard and made into a goal of a whole union. For the last discussion, we'll have the jurisprudence. So the case of the GR number 221411 is about the Italcarat Incorporated, the petitioner, versus Geraldine Herasmillo, the respondent. So the case is about as follows. On June, or on January 13, 2009, respondent Geraldine Herasmillo or Geraldine filed a complaint for illegal dismissal, reinstatement, back wages, separation pay, declaration of the quit claim, and release as null and void. 13 pound pay, litigation expenses, damages, and attorney's fees against the petitioner, Italcarat Incorporated, which was his company. The facts of the case are as follows. Geraldine alleged that the company hired him on June 1, 1990. Then in 1993, he was designated as the head of the maintenance and toolmaker until his dismissal on November 20, 2008 on the ground of the serious business losses. He claimed that during and prior to the last quarter of 2008, the company has repeatedly informed its employees of its proposed retrenchment program because it was suffering from serious business losses. In particular, Geraldine claimed that Noel San Pedro, which was his OIC or the general manager of the company, informed him sometime in November 2008 that the company was planning to retrench a number of workers in the maintenance and tool section. and that if opts to retire early, will be given a sum of amounting 170,000 pesos. However, to his dismay, Geraldine was later informed by San Pedro that he would be receiving only the amount of 26,901.34 pesos. Thus, Geraldine, through his lawyer, sent a letter dated November 25, 2008, essentially demanding the amount of 170,000 pesos he was allegedly promised earlier. Since the company did not respond, Geraldine filed an instant complaint for the illegal dismissal. So for addition for this information as follows. Geraldine also planning to work abroad. He also the month before he was going to be separated from the company, he takes leave of absences and already filed a resignation as he was planning to work abroad. And also this was a time that he's informed about the retrenchment program that will happen to the company. So about this case, he's expecting to receive a separation pay amounting to 170,000 pesos. So for the ruling, we're going to discuss about for the next slide. So for the ruling of the court, unless the fact of dismissal is proven, the validity and legality thereof cannot be given, even be an issue. In the present case, the fact of the matter is that it was Geraldine himself who resigned from his work, as shown by the resignation letter submitted and the quit claim that he acknowledged, and thus he was dismissed by the company. So by the time na na-discover niya na magkakaroon ng retrenchment program, this was around November 2008. But a month before that, on October 2008, he was already planning to resign for the company. So under this, he was not dismissed because it was not a resignation by the employer, but it is a resignation by the employee or the voluntary resignation because he already filed a resignation as he was not dismissed from the company. So which means Geraldine is not entitled to separation pay as he was not illegally dismissed. Now, if Geraldine telling that there are companies who are giving separation pay for those who retirees from other companies. Yes, there could be. But as a general rule, the law does not require employers to pay the employees that have resigned any separation pay unless there is a contract or at least merong pag-uusap between the employer and the employee that there will be a separation pay. Otherwise, there is an existing a company practice of giving a separation pay to its resignees, which in the case of Italcarat companies doesn't have those kind of practice. So which means Geraldine failed to prove that there's a contract exists between him and the company regarding that there will be a separation pay to be given. And he also failed to prove that there is a company practice ng Italcarat Incorporated about giving a separation pay to the resignees. So for the conclusion, considering that there was no dismissal involved in this case, as Geraldine voluntarily resigned from the work, his claims arising from his complaint for illegal dismissal must be denied. This includes his claim for the separation pay as he failed to prove the entitlement thereto, either via contract or the company practice. So instead na makuha niya yung separation pay na hinahanap niya around amounting to 170,000 pesos, ang natanggap na niya is yung kanyang last pay which amounting to 26,901.34. And for the last conclusion and lastly for this case was in favor of the Italcarat company, which is the petitioner. So thank you for listening. Sa references, we'll have that for the next slide. So thank you and have a nice day.